You're listening to Honestly Aging by Friends Life Care VigR, a podcast where we explore what it's like getting older, the peaks, the valleys, and everything in between. In this season of Honestly Aging by Friends Life Care VigR, we're covering topics related to vibrant aging. I'm your host, Cheryl Proska. Let's grow old together. By 2030, 1 in 5 Americans will be 65 or older. But what if we saw this as an opportunity rather than a challenge? Today, I'm joined by Becky Blue, author of Turning: The Magic and Mystery of More Days and a passionate advocate for positive aging. After a career in geriatric nursing, Becky discovered her voice as an author in her 60s. She now uses storytelling to challenge ageist narratives and inspire others to see their later years as a time of opportunity rather than decline. Becky, welcome to the podcast and thank you for being here. How are you today?
I'm great, Cheryl. Thank you. I'm in South Dakota. It's a little bit cold and snowy this morning, but we've made it to March, so I'm good.
Congratulations to us all for getting on the precipice of spring because it's been a rough winter for us here in Pennsylvania too.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely.
So I want to start by kicking things off with hearing about your journey from geriatric nursing to then becoming an author in your 60s. I mean, it's so inspiring. What was the turning point that led you to write Turning: The Magic and Mystery of More Days?
Yeah, one of the great things about getting to be like the age I am, I'm 65, is to go able to go back and connect the dots across your life, right? I mean, at the time, it just seems maybe a little murky or what am I really accomplishing? But now when I look back, it kind of all makes sense. When I was young, I love to write poetry. And then I ended up more going into the healthcare field. But then that took me into roles where I was doing grant writing, which I love because I always did in my soul love being a writer. But I never thought of publishing anything. And then when it came to, I think my church had asked me to write some devotionals and put some things online. And I thought, well, this is kind of fun. And then I started a blog. And then I was going to be turning 60. And I thought, okay, I should know how to deal with this because I was in geriatric nursing. I should know what this next decade is going to bring. So I decided to just kind of write about it in real time. I started writing some essays and then it just sort of snowballed from there.
Anything else in addition to turning 60 that made you say, this is the moment that it's time to share this story?
Well, I think it was, my friends who were also kind of panicking a little bit about turning 60, and a lot of them are just a few months older than me. And so, they'd always talk about, oh my gosh, you guys, I can't believe we're going to turn 60. And I just kept saying, well, okay, this is going to be a whole new time of new opportunities. And most of us had been almost retired by then. So I think I was kind of wanting to just help my friend group. And then, of course, the other thing that happened at the time that I turned 60 is the pandemic started. And so it turned out that I had a lot of time to write.
And what a beautiful gift to give to your friends. Becky was kind enough. She sent me her book and it's so beautiful to look at and it's a beautiful read. I've been diving into it myself. And let's turn it over to you. Let's talk about the book, Turning: The Magic and Mystery of More Days. In the book and in some of our earlier conversations, I've heard you say that those milestone birthdays, especially the
Mhm.
ones that end in zero. You talked about turning 60. I've recently turned 40. And really, these birthdays tend to carry some extra weight. Why do you think we place so much significance on them?
That's a really good question. I think again, it's probably kind of a cultural thing, right? I mean, you can't imagine turning one of those decade birthdays without seeing the black balloons and you know, all the things and the jokes about you know, you're just on the downhill now, right? So I think it's kind of a cultural thing. Actually, I should look into this. I don't know if this is the sense of people in other countries around the world, but certainly it is in America. And so maybe it's actually pushed by balloon stores and party stores or something like that.
Good point.
But but I think you tend to kind of internalize some of that, and it's okay. It's okay to be reflective and realize, okay, maybe this is my time to sort of just take a serious look at where my life is right now. So I do think we tend to weigh everything on those birthdays. Like, how am I doing physically? How am I doing mentally? How am I doing emotionally and even spiritually? And sometimes you'll be motivated then to make changes, or at least what I think is most valuable about it, it is a time to share those thoughts with other people, especially your core group of friends. And let's just call it out and say what you're really feeling, have some serious conversations, and then maybe keep each other accountable for what could this next 10 years look like for us.
And I love how you're talking so much about your friends and the importance that friendship continues to hold throughout our lives. I have found that
Mhm.
my friends have shifted. I have one like really best friend for many, many years who I cherish. And it's just interesting that to kind of move through the world with her and
Mhm.
have some of these life experiences in kind. So I just love how you're impressing upon us really that importance of friendship.
Oh, I agree. And I have kind of the same situation in my life. The other thing I'm finding that I'm really appreciating at this time in my life is making new friends, and that's okay to find new friends. And the other kind of rule of thumb I use is to take an inventory, maybe around Christmas time each year, and say, do I have a friend from every decade? I
Yeah.
love doing that. It's so fun. You know, who's my teenager friend? Who's my friend in their 20s, in their 30s, 40s, on and on. And because we learn so much from those other generations. And so I'd really encourage people to have a friend from every decade.
Absolutely. So we're talking about milestones. We're talking
Mhm.
about decades. And you also started talking about when you're reflecting, thinking about your body, your mind, and your spirit.
Mhm.
This is
Mhm.
also the way that you structured your book into those three sections. Why was it
Mhm.
important for you to organize the book in this way?
I am a nurse by my career, and then I moved into faith community nursing, and where we put nurses into churches. And very much in that area of my career, I learned about looking at people, body, mind, and spirit. And I think it's even more relevant as you move into this third chapter of life. The body we know can kind of be unforgiving, so to speak. There will be things that happen which just maybe in some cases are almost expected or inevitable. And the mind, we really want to keep our mind sharp. And I picture my mother-in-law who would always be doing her daily crossword puzzle. And then spirit, which is one that probably doesn't, as we know, doesn't probably get enough attention or acknowledgement in our culture today, but it can really be, I feel like, the engine or the spark plug to kind of overcome the weaknesses in the body and the mind as we get into this third decade of life. We need to have that spiritual energy to just want to get out the door in the morning and do something new, meet someone new. So I'm all about body, mind, and spirit. And whenever I worked in the nursing field, that's how I would assess someone. And so that's probably why I set up the book the way I did. The first or the first third of the book deals with the body, things like our senses and hearing and the need for activity, the need for hydration. The middle section is more about the mind and things like, how do I feel, kind of that emotional feeling. And then the third chapter is the spirituality. Like, what is the bigger meaning to my life? What have I learned from my children? All different kinds of those those bigger topics. And then I talk about my own faith tradition as a Christian and how forgiveness and the hope of everlasting life impacts my day-to-day life.
Everything you're saying is making me think of the word resilience, where that
Mm,
spark, that spirit inside of you, putting that out into the world, and also going
mhm,
internal and thinking about it, that that at least for me helps me show up every day, helps me be resilient even
mhm.
through difficult times. I still have my spirit, regardless of what might be happening on the
Yeah,
outside. I
right.
can still show up.
Absolutely. And that's really why, the turning title of my book is kind of a play on, yes, you're turning 60 or you're turning 40, has the birthday candles on the cover. But as you get into the book more, you realize that my use of the word turning is a posture that we can use as we age. And so check your posture when you go out the door. Am I more concerned about what's happening to me today? Am I turned in on myself? Am I making myself my own project? Or in a much better life-giving way, turn out, look up. What is your higher power telling you? What is the world needing from you today? And so, yeah, that spiritual energy is a thing, and it can help you overcome the losses that you might be feeling in those other parts of your life.
Did writing this book shift your own view of aging in any unexpected ways?
Yeah, I mean, I think it just made me more observant of what was happening to me then as I turned 60 and now I'm 65. And I have always when I first wrote the book, I thought, oh, this is for anybody turning 60, like it'd be a nice birthday present. But the more I went out and spoke about it and joined book or sat in on book clubs and things like that, I realized that it can speak to anyone. It's to someone to you who's 40. Um, but so then I started seeing it as a little bit of a guidebook or a field guide to aging. And so I thought, okay, I guess I'm going to use this myself. I didn't just write it for everybody else. And one of the themes of the book that keeps coming back is, what is kind of waiting in the wings or hiding in the corner of your soul that you kind of wish you would have done, but for whatever reason haven't had time or resources to do. And so, just one specific example from my own life, a couple of years ago, I started taking ballet. And I took ballet for a semester in college for a PE credit, and I absolutely loved it. But then as my life went on, it just never really worked out, or maybe I never even thought about it. But then after writing this book and thinking about, okay, one of my most important things in my life is how to avoid falls and how
Mhm.
to have great posture and great strength. And I thought, well, maybe I could do ballet again. So I did a deep dive and I was doing YouTube videos and everything. And then I got brave enough to actually go to a studio in our town. And so I've been doing that for about the last 18 months. And I actually got to perform in the Nutcracker with the whole dance company. And just recently we did Coppelia, another ballet. And so honestly, I don't think I would have done those things had I not written a book and leaned into the, inspiration that's there.
That's amazing, and it's not easy to put yourself out there and
No.
try something, a little bit new or different, or really resurface some of your passions. Early in the podcast, I had someone on, and she had joined a choral group for older adults, and
Mm.
just the way that really helped her shift her life a little bit. She met a boyfriend, she's
Ah,
traveled with the chorale, and it just hearing about your ballet class where now you're not only taking a class, it's not only an interest. Now you're performing it
yeah.
and you're really bringing the arts and really a light into other people's lives to come and take part in
Thank
it.
you.
How lovely.
Yes, thank you. And as you mentioned, the guests that you had previously, I think something that is easy to creep in when you're making that decision to do it or not is a fear of failure, or I'm not going to be good enough, or my voice is not what it was when I sang in my college choir, that kind of thing. And so a real gift to yourself, I think, is giving yourself a lot of grace and just saying, let's just do it. And I do think that does come with this third act of life, just a little more of a let's just try it. My dad used to have a saying, which kind of is maybe not the best, but he used to say, let's do something even if it's wrong. And I suppose I've got that in me too. So yeah, so I'm just always willing now at this age to just try it.
I want to go back to something you were talking about before, which is your faith and what an
Mhm.
important part faith plays in your life. How would you say that your faith has shaped your perspective on aging? And what ways were you able to weave that into the writing of Turning?
Oh, thank you. Yeah, my faith has been important for me my entire life, and I keep, studying and learning more, and certainly in worship and Bible studies. And I think what has come to me is the power of the written word, the power of the scriptures. And one of the concepts that I'd learned recently, so centuries ago, in the very early times. I think it was from the Greeks, and before they really understood the human anatomy, what they felt like was that if the word of God comes into your ear, it goes like there's this big corridor that sends it straight to your heart.
Mm.
That it doesn't need to go through your brain to kind of sort out and examine so much, but that you can just hear those words coming right down into your heart as a promise. And so I would say that is what I have embraced, and that I know that those words are for me, and that every day is a new chance, and hope is a very real thing for me. Some people probably would call me, way too positive, but I think our we can do that because we have a trust and a faith that life can be beautiful even when it's hard. Um, that we can not always just see the silver linings, but see the learning that comes from things that are hard, see the new friendships, new relationships that we encounter. So I guess that's why, yeah. I mean, it's definitely the faith is definitely my foundation, but again, it's kind of that turning out and turning up
Mhm.
and listening to not only the word of God, but to your friends and the people that you encounter throughout the day.
And something I think we learn very early in our lives is what you put out in the world is what you tend to get back. What the way
Mhm.
that you emanate yourself tends to be what would attract people or or detract people from you. So
Yeah.
like that, like those lessons and turning it into more of a heart space than a head space. That's really poignant
Oh,
for me right now.
that's a wonderful way to say it, Cheryl. A heart space instead of a head space. I might have to steal that when I go do some speaking. I really like that. And I don't think we give enough credence to that, to the power of that, or we are very maybe afraid to share that with people. And that's where the authenticity comes. I don't care how smart you are or how you're going to analyze everything you just saw in the nightly news or whatever. Tell me, tell me what's going on inside you. Are you scared? Is there anger? Is there fear? Or is today a day of joy? It's or wonder. I've loved that word lately, wonder. So yeah.
And a way to like before you start like speaking outwardly, sometimes it can help to have that reflection time. And that is
Mhm.
what you do in turning. At the end of each chapter, you have
Mhm.
three prompts, I'll say, because they're
Mhm.
not all questions. Some of them are prompts, and they're invitations to reflect.
Mhm.
What impact are you hoping that these reflections are going to have on your
Mhm.
readers?
Well, I really always hoped for the book that people would have an experience with it, and I think to have an experience with it, you probably I mean, you need to reflect on it, right? This isn't like reading and I guess you reflect on a fiction book as well, but, um, so I really thought the most valuable way to read this book is probably with some other people. And so in a lot of situations, it has been book clubs and one that I got to attend, just for an example, I got to just sit there and I watched them go through the questions at the end of one of the chapters. And it was the one about, what would you do if, or what's waiting in the wings for you that you haven't done in your life that you'd really like to try? And a big round table of nurses, happened to be retired nurses. And one woman raised her hand and she goes, "Well, I would really like to rock babies in the intensive care nursery, but I'm not sure I'd be very good at it." So she said that to these friends, and this book club's been meeting for like 15 years. And everyone around the table goes, "Oh, Mary, you'd be fantastic. We never knew you wanted to do that." And here's all these people who've been nurses. I mean, they've got connections. They can get her into the local hospital to rock some babies. So then they became kind of like this accountability group for her. So I mean, we all know what that's like when we're two or more gathered kind of thing. I mean, this magic just happens, right? But you have to be speaking the truth and speaking from your heart, as you implied before. So,
Absolutely. Having people on your team is priceless, and people
mhm.
also on your team to hold you accountable. It's not,
Yeah, yeah,
all
and they
just
will.
people guessing. Yeah, good, good.
Mhm, mhm. Yeah.
So before we get into some of your perspectives on aging and storytelling and your TEDx talk, I do want to have one more question about the book. And as you look back on it, are there any chapters
Mhm.
that are especially meaningful to you?
That's such a great and a hard question because, I just love every chapter, of course, but I think I do kind of go in and out of ones that I prefer. And so right now, I would say it's chapter 8, and it's called The Wonder Years. And I open with kind of a fun take on the Wonder Years TV show, which is
Mhm.
I love to do a throwback to anything culturally in the past. So I think people might enjoy that. But I do tell a story about my father-in-law. And what makes that chapter special right now is he passed away about a year ago at the age of 92. And of course, we miss him. And what we miss is just his gumption and his willingness to try anything. And what he did in his mid 70s was he took about 3 summers of his life to build a full-scale replica of a 1942 Chris Craft wooden boat. I mean, it wasn't like this big. It's like this big. It was like engine, all the things, to the point where after 3 summers, he completed it, and we had a big party and a christening, and we took it out on the lake and watched him drive it and watched him give rides to his grandchildren. But the real meat of that story, I think, because I interviewed him about that as I was writing the book, he said, Becky, those 3 summers of my life when I built that boat were the best summers of my life." And so this was, I think it was 74, 75, 76. So I asked my readers, could you believe that your best summers are yet to come?
It's something to think about, and it's also that he had to take the initiative to make those summers
Absolutely.
the best of his life. It didn't just happen to him. He had to
No.
get up
Mm-mm.
and, really it sounds very purposeful that he
Oh, that's
knew
good.
he had a
Hmm.
goal. He was able to, get up in the morning, go about whatever he needs to do in his day, and also focus on that special project. And
Hmm.
it makes sense that it's his best summers ever. Very unexpected, at least for me to hear, though.
Yeah, and I think I was even unexpected. I was surprised to hear that, and I know him. I've known him
Mm.
for 40 years or whatever, and for him to say that, knowing what a very rich, full life he's had. But I really appreciate what you just said about the purpose, because we know that that's a real key to aging is to have a purpose. And he was retired, and sometimes that can get a little mucky, like, and he loves to golf, and so, yeah, he probably goes golfs with the same guys all the time. But to have something that he really wanted to create and then complete it, that was a yeah, it's very impactful.
So you are a storyteller. You're a storyteller teller of your own life as well as a storyteller of other people's lives. And storytelling can be such a powerful tool.
Mhm.
I'm curious about, why do you think sharing our personal aging stories is
Mhm.
is crucial for changing the societal perceptions? And
Mhm.
you just changed one of mine, which is I would societally not perceive that my 70s will be my best summers ever. So
Yeah.
I'd love to hear more from you on that.
Yeah, well, I'm really my overall mission kind of after I started sharing this book more is I really want to change the culture of aging, which I your organization is doing great things around that as well. But we know that to change culture in general, any kind of culture, you need to do two things. You need to do story worthy things that you can tell stories about. So I've told some of my own stories here in this book, or listen to other people's story worthy things and tell those stories. So as I just did about my father-in-law's boat. And so little teeny bit changed the culture of aging for Cheryl today, as I told you that story, right? And I do find it powerful, but it is the telling is the important part. So I'll just share a quick story. I was at a book club and I again was asking that question about, or I do love to remind or tell people one of the best things to do is to do something new,
Mhm.
wake up and find something new to do. So this one woman raised her hand and she goes, well, every week we have a coffee group that meets on a Wednesday. But this year we've decided to every Wednesday we have to do something completely different. So it's really not about going to a coffee shop or this certainly not the same coffee shop. We need to do something new every week. And she said, so last week we all got bundled up and we went to the local ski hill and we all went tubing together. And
Mhm.
these are women who are like in their 60s. And so it's like the middle of the day, they get all bundled up and they go tubing and they have a blast, which is fantastic. But the question I asked her, I said, "Well, who did you tell that? Who did you tell about that to?" And she kind of goes, "Well, didn't really say much." And I said, "To change the culture, it would be great. You should post pictures on Facebook or make sure you tell your neighbor kids that, hey, I went tubing this week, and they might not believe you, but it's those kinds of stories. I mean, yes, you can do those really cool things, those very curious, unpredictable things, but then you really need to tell people about it.
And I mean, that's really telling about how documenting our own aging journey, everybody's aging, can be
Yeah.
an inspiration to others to embrace their later years and find joy, find purpose, as well as wherever you are in your life. And what a goal. Something new every
Yeah.
week. That, I mean, that would be a little too ambitious for me. Maybe every other week.
Yeah. I was impressed. I thought it was a fantastic idea.
Would you prefer to age independently in your own home or live in a nursing facility? I know what I'd rather do. Friends Life Care membership offers just that. Plan today for a future lived at home with vitality, independence, growth, and resilience while protecting your savings. Learn about your options at a free seminar or webinar. Register at friendslifecare.org/register or call 215-628-8964. Now I want to get into your TEDx talk, which
Mhm.
I have watched, I have enjoyed, I have shared with my colleagues. And in that talk, you say you're never too young to choose how to age.
Mhm.
Can you unpack that idea for us?
Yeah, and I'll just tee it up by telling a little story. The other night I was in our downtown, I was at some art show opening or something, and I met kind of a group of young, they were 30 somethings, I guess, and I was introduced as being the author of this book, and the woman I was talking to said, "Oh, that's so interesting." She said, "Tell me more. Tell me, like, when does aging start?" And I said, "0." I mean, I was maybe being a little too honest right there, but it's true. I mean, aging starts at 0, and we know now from all the science that there are things that you can do, no matter how young you are, to impact your life down the road. And also, again, kind of back to body, mind, and spirit. Not just, we think so often about, what can we do to our bodies? Of course, we need to feed it good food. We need to keep moving. Those kind of obvious things, but I think there's also such an opportunity when children are young to impact their perception of aging. And one
Mhm.
of the examples I use in my TED talk is I put up two slides. The first one is of kind of your typical kindergartner when they are celebrating the 100th day of school. And you maybe have this in your community where the kids come dressed like 100-year-old person, and it's all very stereotype. I mean, it just screams stereotype. It's got the gray bun, the glasses, the raggy sweater, the floral dress, the walker, all the things. And so I kind of challenged my audience at TEDx to, okay, yeah, you see what this slide looks like, but what if you did this? And I share a picture of a friend of mine who sent her little girl to school, Hadley, with a really cute crew neck sweater, a string of pearls, hair down, I think, cute glasses, skinny pants, and boots, and no assistive device. And, you know, honestly, for these little children who are in their kindergarten years or whatever, there's a very good chance that they become 100 years old in the
Yes.
way the world is going today. Or even their parents who might be in their 30s or 40s, they could very well live to be 100. And they don't want to be that person who is shown in the first slide. So, yeah, it's never too old to learn how to age and or choose how to age, and that includes your perceptions of aging.
I have to say that as I get older, and I don't know why I've always thought about this. I've always wanted to maintain some type of longer hair. I've never wanted short hair.
Oh,
And it's speaking to me because so often you see older women, like as the older you get, the shorter your hair gets. And then
yeah.
I'm like, no, when I go gray, I still want the longer hair and I'm going to figure out a
Mhm.
way to maintain it. So it's just interesting that you brought that up because it like that again my perception of aging was that there's going to be this time when I get to a certain age and we're just going to have to cut all my hair off. That's a wild way to think, but definitely when I was way younger I just put that together. So I love that that came up in this conversation.
Well, and I love that you mentioned that because I write for a newsletter called Crunchy Tales. It's out of London. It's such a fun publication, and I've been thinking actually about writing a blog post about hair length
Please
as
do.
we age because it is a thing.
Yes.
It's a thing. Yeah.
So that's going to be a way that I take ownership of how I age.
Yeah.
I'm curious to get your take on what are some other, probably more significant ways that we can take ownership of how we age, no matter where we are in our life.
Yeah. Well, the thing lately I've been kind of diving into is, from the health side, is inflammation. And that is just seems to be when you read the longevity literature, it's kind of the one thing if we could sort of conquer inflammation. And there are some very easy ways for each of us to conquer inflammation in our body. One of the main ways is just to reduce stress. So when you have stress and you have cortisol, and I won't go into all the pathogens because I'm a retired nurse. I'm currently not licensed, so I don't want to be doing that. But I would just encourage people to read about inflammation, but certainly be mindful of stress. And I wish we had some better ways to measure stress,
Mhm.
or more accessible ways. So I think if you can keep your stress level down, that can be an amazing thing for your aging. And then, of course, the very obvious one is to just move. If you can just keep moving, and it's not that you have to join a gym and lift weights and all those things, even though those things are great, but try to not sit longer than a half an hour. Just get up and move. I think that can be one of the best things. And then you kind of already touched on it when you said purpose. As I was doing my TED talk and looking more into all these different research studies about who can live the longest, kind of thing, and it's a lot of it just comes down to friends and purpose.
Mm.
It's just those things. And we know there's been so much written or talked about lately about the loneliness epidemic and how that impacts us physically and mentally, certainly. So, whatever you can do with to find friends and find purpose, and it doesn't have to be complicated. It can be picking up the phone and talking to a friend. Or last week, I jumped on a meal train thing, where you take uh, food to people who need it because of health reasons or whatever. And I made soup. I made a pot of soup, and I just felt so much better about myself that day. Not like boastful about myself, but again, I think it kind of gave me that spiritual energy. I'm like, oh, I'm doing something for someone else. I could have been in my kitchen baking brownies and eating them, all of them, or whatever, but I didn't. I was chopping and cooking and experiencing the smells and all the senses. And so, as much as, again, find purpose, find friends, it almost sounds too simple, right?
It's what some of the things that sound the most simple are the most challenging to put into practice. So,
Mhm.
still hearing the encouragement does make a difference, and putting it out into the world that these are important things. And sometimes you're trying to make friends and you don't necessarily find those connections, but you just stick with it and
Mhm.
understand that there are all different types of friends. There's friends that you're going to tell
Yeah.
every single thing to. Then there's friends you're going to see once a month at a book club or maybe a supper
Mhm.
group or something like that. And that's something that I've had to understand over the years. Not everyone's going to
Mhm.
be your best friend, and that is
Mhm.
okay. And it's still a
Mhm.
way to get that socialization part of my life fulfilled. So I totally get what you're saying.
Mhm.
Before we move on to getting your takes on longevity and a mindset for vibrant aging, I just want to ask if there's anything more you want to add about how we as individuals and maybe as society can contribute to, as you suggested, change the culture of aging.
Well, we haven't even talked about ageism yet, which is, I am very aware of that, obviously, because of my, career choice and what I write about and all that. But I think ageism, where we kind of judge people based on their age, it's become kind of the only ism that's still really out there and vibrantly surviving, right? So I think whatever we can do, again, to kind of call that out. And but it works both ways. I think even older adults, sometimes we can look at youth and think, oh, well, they're so messed up. No, or I'm
Mm.
not gonna, so I think it's we can become judgmental of other age groups, not just older adults. And so kind of what happens, I guess, from the standpoint of ageism then, is we tend to each live in our own little silo. So we become most comfortable if we're hanging out with people who are in our same age group. But when you mix that up a little bit, that's kind of where some real magic can happen. And I've always loved the term old soul. And I guess probably when I was younger, I was an old soul. I was always the kid who wanted to stay in the kitchen and listen to the older adults talk to each other rather than run outside and play with the kids that were the same age as me. Uh, so I think we need to be aware of our statements. One of my favorite things, now I don't know if I have that in front of me. Did I send you the hardcover book? I
Yes,
did, didn't I? Can you read the Mel Robbins quote at the top of the book?
I certainly can. Don't you dare say you're too old. Your next chapter could be the best of your life, and Becky will show you how. By Mel Robbins, host of the Mel Robbins podcast, and many other things.
Mhm,
Wow.
mhm. Yeah, I was so honored when she agreed to put a endorsement on the top of the book. But it is that simple. Don't you dare say you're too old. And so I think that's just kind of a good mantra and to catch yourself. I always laugh that my friend group has all figured that out now. They can't complain about like, I'm too old because they know I'll kind of like, yeah. So I think that's just kind of just good daily advice.
So, I'd love to get your take on longevity. We talked a
Mhm,
little bit about this regarding reducing stress, moving your body, finding purpose, having friends. Are there any
mhm.
other keys to living well that will extend us into the next chapters of our life? Anything to add to the ones that you previously hit upon?
Yeah, well, a really big one for me, and a topic that I love to teach on when I was in geriatric nursing is sleep. And
Mhm.
I write about that in the book, but I'll even just share a story. Yesterday morning, I woke up at about 7 a.m., and the first thing I said to my husband was, I slept through the night. And it was almost as if, you're back in the day when you get so excited when your child sleeps through the night. But now in this stage of my life, if I sleep through the night, that's an amazing gift. And
Mhm.
so, and it's and I've never been a proponent of sleep aids. Of course, there's more kind of herbal, lighter things you can do in discussion with your doctor. But what I find, the nights I sleep best are the nights after the days I've been the most active. I happened to have a Pilates class yesterday. I happened to go swimming yesterday, so I had like double exercise on that day, and and I and I slept so much better. And we know that that's how God made us. We need to sleep. And so that's another great question is have a discussion with your friends or your family. So what do you guys do to help you sleep? Or what do you think I could I just uh, it's just it's almost like again something that sounds simple but we know it's not. And I think that we're making more progress in that area, but certainly it's connected to longevity. Mentioned the inflammation, the stress. We want to avoid that. Um, one thing about the just the stretching and the Pilates and the ballet or the yoga, I'd love to quote a study that I learned used in my book, and it was somebody did a research study where they just had to watch people walk down the street or in the mall or whatever, and then they guessed the age of each person. And what the researchers found that the people who had the best posture were always perceived as being 15 years younger than they actually were.
My goodness.
Isn't that something?
Yes. How
Yeah.
significant.
How significant. So I was telling that with to my Pilates instructor, and she spends a lot of time in class talking about our posture. And one of the little tips, which I'll just give your listeners, which I absolutely love, she's great at making these images, is you take your shoulder blades and you tuck them down into some big pockets in your back. So you're not like this, right? You kind of have to extend your neck, and then you just push those shoulder blades down, and that can help you with your posture. So again, there are these things that can make you look younger, even though you know what your age is, whatever. Um, so other ages of longevity, I kind of laugh because I've been reading more about cold. These people who do these cold plunges and those things, which I haven't done, but I do live in South Dakota, and so I do just get out into the cold weather. So
Mhm.
there's just a lot going on, and I think that it will be kind of that next frontier of modern medicine. And last week I was on a podcast, and somebody asked me, um, "What do you think you'll be talking about related to aging 10 years from now?" And
Hmm.
I just said, "I hope we won't be talking about it."
Wow. Hmm.
And because it will be just kind of a given, an accepted thing, we're not going to stop aging. But why am I so different at this age, aging, than you are in your 40s? I know people would some people would see us as very different individuals because of our age and because of aging. But I'd rather just talk about, health in general, or where are you traveling, or what are you reading these days, there's that basically to kind of drop those stereotypes that we have.
So, to drop those stereotypes, I think it would take enabling a mindset shift.
Yeah.
And I'd be curious to hear from your experience. What mindsets are you finding that are contributing to navigating aging the most successfully?
Mhm. Um, I think the one mindset I've been loving looking at is called an explorer's mindset.
Hmm.
And I was inspired by that a few months ago. We were driving from South Dakota to Utah, I guess, and to drive across the plains of Wyoming and to think about the explorers, the Lewis and Clark, or whoever else it might be, or even the Mormons moving out there with their hand carts, and to just think how brave they were. They didn't know what was around the next curve. They knew that they should maybe follow this river, or somebody told them to go through this pass or whatever. But had an explorer's mindset. And I think at the center of an explorer's mindset is a curiosity and also a bravery and a courage. And so I would say that my dad used to say, he had all these pithy things, and you probably heard this, but he said, well, aging isn't for sissies. And so you've got to be kind of tough, and I think you have to be brave, and I think you have to be curious. And just this past weekend, I got to visit my aunt who's 99,
Mm.
and so inspiring. And she certainly has her losses related to her body and mind, but she was still curious. She wanted to know what we were up to, what were we doing. Um, so, and she's bravely looking ahead to her 100th birthday, which she can't even believe either. But uh, so I guess I would say I like to use the phrase stay clever and curious.
Mhm.
And clever, to me, clever just means you got to kind of figure it out. And you might have to do, I always, there's plenty of stories about that, people who, you know, lock themselves out of the apartment or whatever and figure out it's got to be clever and figure out how you're going to get back in kind of thing. Um, and then curious, even if you are in the doctor's office and you get some bad news. Take it as a time to learn. Let's learn more about my body. What's happening? What's going on? So that explorer's mindset, I guess, is what I would say.
One of the words that you said was courage, and,
Hmm.
I do a daily yoga, and sometimes it starts with a mantra. One of the mantras was, like, "I am courageous," and I'm like,
Mm.
"Oh my goodness, like, that's gonna be my mantra?" And when I started thinking about it more, I thought, well, being courageous and having courage is really showing up regardless of how you're feeling, whether you're
Hmm.
feeling like scared or maybe you don't really want to be in a certain situation,
Hmm.
but bringing that courage into it to be there anyway and really tackle whatever it is ahead for you, and having that's not a mindset I really ever thought about before. So just playing with these different mindsets is really speaking to me. And I know it's something that, we're going to have to do throughout our lives.
Hmm.
We invite children to be curious. We invite children
Hmm.
to
Hmm.
navigate uncertainty. It never really goes away though. It's not like we turn a certain
No.
age and something changes. So just to continue to explore different
Hmm.
mindsets
Hmm.
is really speaking to me. So thanks for bringing that forward.
Right. And I think sometimes we think, oh, explore. Well, that's going to, I'm going to have to be able to walk really well, or I'm going to have to be
Mm,
able to drive, or I'm going to have to be able to, go far away places. Well, we know there's some very interesting people right in your own community that you can visit with and explore what their life is like. You can pick up a book in your bookshelf that you haven't read for a while, and it can kind of take you away to a completely different place. And so again, it's kind of turning outside yourself and seeing what the world is offering you.
we touched a little bit about you working in faith community nursing,
Hmm.
and we know faith is important to you. We know that nursing and your community are all important to you. I'd like to hear, like, what has your work in your faith community nursing taught you about how we experience aging?
Well, I think it's given me like a broad view, right, from the incredible losses that can kind of pile
Mm,
on certain lives, which almost to the point of just being unfair. You kind of question about why did they keep having such difficulty? And so, because of that, I think it gives me a great empathy, and I think it takes empathy to
mm,
be in this world, to really um, feel like there's something um, that I can still offer my community. So, otherwise, it certainly is resilience, as you touched on before, seeing the resilience of people, seeing the role of a community, how that can make a difference. That, and I heard that from clients all the time. It's like they were so grateful for this church community, the people who they knew were praying for them, or the people that they knew were bringing food or were visiting. And then the impact on the volunteers, because oftentimes these ministries and these churches were based on the use of a lot of volunteers. And uh, there would be people who, are far into their 80s, maybe even 90s, and simply making phone calls, or they're coming to help make meals to put in the church freezer to feed people. So I think the broadest scope, I think it brings to life the importance of community.
mhm,
And I think it's worth evaluating in your own life. Am I a part of a community? What's my community? And I think one of the toughest things that we've had to do in our journey recently was helping my in-laws. We were basically caregiving with them and recognizing their love, love, love of their home,
Mhm.
but also at some point their need to relocate. And I I think part of the love of their home was that community that they had
Yeah.
built over so many years. And that's pretty hard to replicate if you leave somewhere you've been for 4 years. So, you know, I think that aging in place is a wonderful gift. So, but figure out how to do that. Ask,
Mhm.
get to be a part of a community, even if you're living in your own home by yourself. It's okay to let people in those doors and help you and see how you're living, and um, or just a volunteer or a pastor or whoever. That I do a funny thing when I talk. I love to. I'm a big Barbara Streisand fan. I don't know if any of your readers are,
I'm
but
sure.
yeah, yeah. So one thing I'll do is I'll just open one of my sections with people who need people are the luckiest people in the world. And everybody starts singing with me. I mean, we all know that song, but it speaks such truth that we all need people, and to need people, we are lucky people.
And it is an invitation to let others in. And, I
Mhm.
for I was listening to some type of study where it was like, individually, we have worry and anxiety about asking for help. However, like, on the other side of things, someone who is asked to help is, more than willing. Like, "Oh, I've been asked
Mhm.
to help. Yes, I'd
Yeah.
love to help you." So just like that
Mhm.
perspective that there is going to be someone out there that is going to get some of that purpose and is going to be more than happy to help you. So
Mhm.
just an invitation I want to reiterate to let others in. There are people that are going to really want to connect with you, and if that connection is through helping you, there are people out there that get so much back from helping others.
Absolutely. And maybe it's as simple as just reminding people to just say yes. It's okay to
Mhm.
say yes. Say yes to someone helping you, or say yes to I can help.
Mhm. Yes, I love
I
it.
think so often it's kind of that, oh, no, I'm going to keep my little. I go into a thing about in the book about how big a playground do you want? And
Mm.
you'll get to that chapter. I love that area, that part of the book, is kind of towards the end of the book. But, I had a wise mentor who told me about that when I was trying to decide if I wanted to make a job change or not. But I think it's so applicable to us in this 3rd chapter of life, um, because it's easy to just kind of maybe even relegate ourselves to our home and just kind of want to stay put. And that's okay to love being with your books and your favorite TV shows and your favorite foods that you're going to make in your kitchen. I do that myself. I love that. But um, to really have this life abundant that I feel like God made us for, we need to make our playground a little bigger.
Mhm.
And as you kind of inch your way out your door and maybe meet somebody at church, well, maybe then that person is like, well, I belong to this club down over here. Why don't you come with me? And then maybe the people in that organization are going to do a little mystery tour on a bus somewhere, or they're going to do a mission trip to a foreign country, and all of a sudden, your little playground is this big. And because of that, you've ended up with more stories, with more relationships, with more friends, and more purpose.
Something else in your TEDx talk that stood out to me was when you talked about aging as a spiral rather than a
Mm,
straight line. Can you
mhm.
share that perspective with our listeners?
Yeah, and I think that goes back to stereotypes too, or culture, I guess, that we have this kind of mindset that, okay, we are born and then we have that first chapter of kind of aging, when we're aging in our first chapter of life where it's mostly education, maybe our first job, kind of that thing. And
Mhm.
then we get to that. And then we get to the second chapter where we're maybe more into our career or family. And then we get to 65 or whatever when we retire, and then it just kind of sort of a wonk.
Mm.
And so that's kind of the typical linear progression, I would say, that's in most people's minds. But why can't we look at aging or moving through life as more of a spiral? So, where there'll be times when we're kind of in, uh, maybe doing the typical things of schooling, but then maybe at about age 50, we decide, well, I want to go back to school, so I'm going to go back to some of those things that were typical at the beginning of life. And, or maybe I'm going to find another relationship. Maybe I'm going to get married for the first time when I'm age 80, so that we should see that we go through life kind of like this, and that's okay. That it's not that you're breaking any rules or that you're hurting someone by kind of crazy that you want to start a business at age 70 or whatever. That just allow for that kind of ebb and flow of life, and that it doesn't have to be attached to a certain number.
And there are plenty of ways to go, back to education or school. There's Ollie. There's also, like, at
Hmm.
least in my area, there's mainline school at night where you can take like a one evening class or like a 6 week cooking series. And
Hmm.
so I went back to get my master's in my late 30s, and it was mostly people in their 20s, but then there were
Hmm.
also people in their 40s that were, in this education program, and there's always an opportunity to learn, always an opportunity to try new things. It doesn't just, as you were saying, it doesn't just stop.
Hmm.
And like, why not? Because that's also another way to, as you were saying before, to be social. And
Hmm.
that's kind of weaving me into one of my last questions for you, which we've talked about so many, and I'm curious, are there anything else that you'd want to say about areas that you'd recommend that we be intentional to really maximize our later years or that third chapter of our lives?
Hmm. One of the things I guess we haven't spoken about yet was the concept of generativity. And that's the concept of not only, you know, what am I, what have I taught the younger generation? What have I taught my
Mhm.
children or my nieces and nephews? But it's also the question of what have I learned from them? And I love that question because I think it brings such an appreciation then to being relevant or being pertinent to this time of 2025. What's new? It might be about apps or it might be about AI or all those things. And it goes back to kind of being curious. But I think the important part of generativity is acknowledging to that young person what they have taught you. And so if you could take time to either speak it to them um, in a conversation to a grandchild or a child, say, thank you, Ian. I love what you have taught me about technology because I would not be able to do all this if I hadn't learned from you. Um, and so then it gives them some feeling of, wow, I've really contributed to my mom.
Mhm.
Either speak those words to them or write it in a handwritten letter or add it to a birthday card or whatever. So to just acknowledge that kind of goes back to the Barbara Streisand song, people who need people are the luckiest people in the world. And we need those younger people in our lives, not just to be proud of them or look at them and say, gosh, he reminds me of me of that age. But to realize that I keep learning just from hanging out with younger people. So that's
Absolutely.
that concept of generativity and
Mhm.
thinking about what have I learned from the younger generation.
So, Becky, this has been such a thoughtful and inspiring and generative conversation for me. Before we wrap up, can you share with our listeners more about where they can learn about you and your book Turning and what might be next for you?
Great, sure. I would love to connect with your listeners. You can go to Becky Blue Writes, all one phrase, beckybluewrites.com. That tells about me and my book, and there's a place there where you can write me back. Otherwise, you can follow me on my socials. I'm on Facebook as Becky Blue. I'm on Instagram as Becky J Blue. I would love to have you follow me. And then what's next? That's a very timely question because I'm really kind of sinking into my next book, and it's a wonderful project about a gentleman named Ed who I was invited to interview. And the thing he wanted at age 93, he was very healthy, but his nurse who takes care of him said the only thing Ed wants is to tell his story. So I did many Tuesday mornings of interviewing him. It's all on my phone, and I transcribed all that. And now I'm kind of putting it together as to what can really be the story of Ed and what can other people learn from him. He's just a wonderful man.
So, before I let you go, if you could leave our listeners with a final thought about embracing aging with joy, what would it be?
Well, I've talked a lot about turning outside ourselves, so you've heard that, but I think I'm going to say, do something new. Just every day, do something new.
Thank you for joining me, sharing your wisdom on aging, sharing your book Turning, and how we can all play a role in shifting the narrative around growing older. It has been an absolute pleasure having you, and I look forward to sharing this episode with all of my listeners. I'm sure they're going to learn so much.
Thank you, Cheryl. It was really fun to visit.
Thank you for listening to Honestly Aging by Friends Life Care VigR, a unique program focused on aging with vitality, independence, growth, and resilience. You can find links and show notes from this episode on our website at friendslifecare.org/podcast. Thank you to Becky Blue for joining us today. You can learn more about Becky, her book, Turning, The Magic and Mystery of More Days, by visiting beckybluewrites.com and Amazon and Mascot Books. You can find Becky's TEDx talk, You're Never Too Young to Choose How to Age, on YouTube. And thank you to Nick Dieterding for editing all the Honestly Aging episodes. If you like our show, please rate, review, subscribe, and join us next time. To learn more about aging with vitality, independence, growth, and resilience, subscribe to our blog at friendslifecare.org/blog.